Hello, my name is Jacob and I'm a software engineer at Meta, and I created a complete guide to full stack MARN web apps development. MARN stack stands for MongoDB, Apollo server with GraphQL API, React.js, and Node.js. I also wrote a blog post, which you can find on my blog jj09.net, and there's like a quick overview of the MARN stack and comparison to currently maybe the most popular MARN stack, where instead of Apollo server you would use Express.js. But I found that Apollo server is actually pretty neat and gives you a lot of out of the box stuff to create the GraphQL API. And in this guide, I'm gonna use Apollo server. I also added a section where you install dependencies. So you need to have Node installed on your machine. I recommend to install it with Brew. Once you have Node, you need to install NodeMon. We're gonna use that for development along the video. And also you need to install Mongo, because that will be our database persistent layer. You can go to their website to find instructions for Mac or instructions for Windows. I linked them on the blog post. I also added commands how to do it on Mac. There's just 4 commands. You need to install Xcode tools, and then you can use Brew to do the installation. Okay, and there's an agenda what we're gonna go through. So at first we're gonna set up the Apollo server backend, and once this is created, we're gonna go ahead and create a simple GraphQL query, and then I will show you how to query GraphQL API with Apollo Playground, which you get for free with Apollo server. Then we're gonna create a React app to build our UI to interact with the backend, and then of course I will show how to call the GraphQL API from the React app. And after that, we're gonna connect MongoDB from the Node.js app, and we're gonna use mongoose for that. And we're gonna create GraphQL query that returns data from MongoDB. And then I also show you how to create routing in the React app with React Router to organize the UI. And the meat of the video is creating the CRUD app, where I'll show you how to create like all the CRUD operations, which is create, read, update, and delete when you create a web app. And we're gonna build like a simple app that allows you to create like a book library where you can add books, edit them, delete, and of course display. So let's get started with setting up the Apollo backend. And again, on my blog, you can find everything step by step. So I'm gonna bring up my terminal, and I'm gonna go to my dev directory. I'm gonna create MARN app directory, and I'm gonna create a separate directory for the backend and for the web UI. So I'm gonna create Apollo server directory, and here we need to create, we need to install a few dependencies. So I need to install Apollo server and also GraphQL tag. Of course, Apollo server is needed for the Apollo server itself, and GraphQL tag is needed for defining the GraphQL queries. We're also gonna use Bubble.js for transpiling JavaScript. So Bubble is a JavaScript transpilation tool that allows you to use features that are not yet implemented by all the browsers or Node.js runtime, but are gonna come to JavaScript in the future. So that's why transpirals were invented. It happened when JavaScript started accelerating rapidly. So like 2 most popular transpilers are TypeScript and Bubble. So here we're gonna use bubble, and I'm also gonna use NodeMon to run the app. So NodeDemon is pretty much like running scripts with Node, but it allows you to automatically rerun them when the text changes. So if you go to Bubble website and you go to the setup, here you can click NodeMon and it shows you what you need to do. So here's the command, what I need to install. So I need to install Bubble Core and Bubble Node. So I'm gonna do that here in the Apollo server. And it will also tell me what I need to do in order to run this and how to run this with NodeDemon. And I'm actually gonna grab kind of this, but I'm gonna modify it a little bit. So I'm gonna open VS Code, but let me go to the main directory. There we go. Here's the Apollo server. Here's the package.json. And here I'm gonna add the scripts, but instead of calling it bubble node, I'm gonna just call it start. And here, instead of saying bubble node, I'm gonna just grab this entire command here. And this will allow me to say npm start, and it will run this command. There's one modification I want to do here, so I think I need to do this. And I don't need the ignore command here. And also, this is path to my script, so I'll put my main script which I want to run in source/index.js. So I'll save that. And there's one other thing I want to do here is I want to use type module, which means I can use ES6 modules instead of common JS modules. So I can use import statements when I am importing modules to a file. So I'm gonna save that one. And now I need to create this source/index.js. So let's do that. I need to create a new directory, source, and new file called index.js. And for now, I'll just create console info hello. And let's see if that works. And actually for that, I'll use the built-in terminal into VS Code. I'll go to Apollo server and I'll say npm start. And hey, it's working. See, so NodeDemon ran it and printed out the command. So I have my Node.js app with NodeDemon and Bubble.js set up. So now let's set up the Apollo server. So here in the index.js, I'm gonna just remove this hello comment, and I'm gonna start with importing the dependencies I need. So I need Apollo server, and I also need start standalone server from Apollo server /standalone. And I'm gonna say const server equals new Apollo server. And once I have my server, I can say await start standalone server. I can pass server here. And I also can pass in like at what port I want Apollo server to run, and I want this to be on port 4000. Okay, so this will pretty much do it, but I need two more things. So you see it's still not working. I didn't pass needed arguments. So Apollo server needs two arguments here. I need to pass type definitions, and I need to pass resolvers. So type definition is the GraphQL schema that will be exposed by the Apollo server, and the resolvers is pretty much like an implementation of that schema. So let's do that. So say const type defs false dot 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 whoops, and const resolvers dot dot dot. So now what do we put in each of these? So GraphQL schema can be defined with GraphQL language, and in order to do that I need to import GQL from the GraphQL tag, and now I can create my schema putting it inside this GQL tag. So this allows me to use the GraphQL language that is being parsed into abstract syntax tree. And the simplest schema I can create here is I can just say query, type query, and let's say I'll expose a query called hello, and this will return a string. So now when I have this type definition, I need to implement it, like what will happen if I call this hello. So resolvers will be just a simple object with the simple mapping. So here I'm going to map query, and I also have the hello, and hello is just a function that returns string. So let's say hello from Apollo server. And that's pretty much it. So now when I save, starting, but here I don't really know whether it worked. So what I can do here is I can extract the URL, and I can just say console info, and let's add here like a cool rocket emoji, and let's say that server ready at URL, and save it now, and boom, there you go, server is ready at localhost 4000. So let me make this smaller because I don't need that much space. So this is my entire Apollo server instantiated, right? I have my GraphQL type definitions, I have the resolvers that define what the different endpoints are doing and returning, and here I just created the Apollo server and just started it. So now let's go to the localhost 4000. There you go. So here you can see I have an example query, and if I click it, it'll just run this query and respond with hello from Apollo server, right? So, and I can go back to my app and I can add exclamation point, I can save it, and now if I go back and rerun, it adds the exclamation point here. So it's pretty cool because you can test the queries with this UI that you don't have to build. You get it out of the box for free. So we have the backend setup. Again, you can follow this up on my blog. So now let's create web UI with React. So I'm bringing up my terminal, and I'm gonna create React app with npx. npx is allow you to run npm modules without actually installing them. So you know how you have to do npm install, let's say create React app, which we'll use to create React app, and then after it's installed, globally you will say npm run. With npx, you can just say npx create React app, and I will call it web UI. It's pretty neat because there's many times when you don't necessarily want to install this package you're gonna use one time, and many times then you don't want to keep updating it. npx do all of that for you for free. It looks like our React app is ready. So let me go back to VS Code, and now here we have the web UI. I'm gonna open a new console here. I'm gonna go to web app and then web UI, and here I'm gonna do similar thing, npm start. Gonna give more space to this, and let's see. So React app by default runs on localhost 3000, which is fine, and there you go. The React app is working. Nothing going on there yet, but we have both Apollo server and React UI set up. So now let's wire it up together, and let's query Apollo GraphQL API from the React app. So before we do that, we need to install Apollo client. So let me go back to my terminal. Let me do that, and we're gonna use this Apollo client to call the API. So back to VS Code. Here my app lives mostly here in the app.js. Let me make this smaller. I just want to know that the server is running, and here I'm gonna get rid of pretty much everything because I don't need this. I also don't need this. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna import GraphQL to define the query, and I'm gonna use Apollo. Actually, I don't need Apollo GQL here. I'm gonna use Apollo client and Apollo provider, and I'm gonna need in-memory cache. I'll explain why I need all of that from Apollo client. And here, in order for me to use that Apollo client, I need to wrap all my components with Apollo provider. So I need to have this Apollo provider, and here I can have my app. Hello. And in order to make it cleaner, I'm gonna create a separate component here. But first, I also need to create my Apollo client. So I'm gonna instantiate it here. Say const client, new Apollo client. And I just need to specify the URI to my Apollo backend, which I can just grab from here. Control C. And I also need to specify the cache. And here I'm gonna use this in-memory cache. And I have a client, and I just need to pass it to Apollo provider. So this allows me now to use that client for the calls. But first, let me create a hello module when I will actually do that. Actually, let me change this to React for better syntax highlighting. Okay, that's great. So let's extract this into the separate component. So I'll create a new folder here called components. I'll create a new component called hello.js. And again, this is just a React component. And here I'll do the standard React component stuff. So export default function hello, and it will return. Let's just return what we have here for now, just the hello. And let's import hello from commands hello. And let's see if everything is working here. So I'll go back to Chrome, my React app, and there you go. We have hello. So we are not connected to the backend yet, but let's do this now. So, you know, I have my entire app wrapped by this Apollo provider, and what is cool about it is that now this Apollo provider will enable me to call Apollo inside the components without any additional code. So I can go to my hello component here, and here I can call the backend. In order to do that, I need to specify my query. So I need GQL, and also I'm gonna use the use query hook from Apollo client. And to specify my query, the GraphQL query, I'm gonna call it hello query. And I'm gonna say GQL, and here I need to put the query. And then here inside my hello function, I'm gonna call the use query, and I'm gonna call this hello query. And this result will have you know, query data. And actually, like, instead of using one variable here, I can just destruct them, so I can get data. I'm also want to get loading, whether data is still loading state, and whether there's an error in the data. But before I'm gonna work on displaying this data, let's define this query, because you might be wondering, like, hey, like, what do I put here? And what is very cool about the Apollo server is that you can go to the Apollo server graphical interface, and you can just grab this query from here. So I'm gonna copy this, and maybe I'm gonna change it into just query, not example query, just query. And I'm gonna paste it here. I'm gonna format so it looks nice, and boom, I have my query. And that's pretty much it. So now I just need to display the data. So what I'm gonna do here is say that if data is loading, then I'm just gonna return div saying loading, nothing fancy. If there is an error, then I want to log the error to console. I'm gonna say hello query error. I'm gonna print the actual error, and I'm gonna return div saying there's error, check console logs. And if everything's go well, then here I want to show the data that was returned. So let's say data hello, right? Because that's what I have here, right? I have this data object and the hello property with hello from Apollo server. And so I'm gonna save that, and let's see what happened here. And I have data hello. Oh, that's because I didn't wrap this into curly braces. Oh, let's see now, and there you go, hello from Apollo server. So everything is working. I have my data from Apollo server, and like, to make sure, let's go back to my index.js and let's remove exclamation point and refresh, and there you go, exclamation mark is gone. So now I have pretty much end-to-end setup. I have Apollo server, I have the React app, the web UI, and web UI is calling Apollo server through the GraphQL endpoint. But this is a pretty simple setup. So let's do like one thing to make it more interesting. So this hello function is like a simple function that doesn't take any parameters, and usually you want to pass some sort of parameters to your functions. So let's add parameter name, and let's print like hello name here. So in order to do that, I first need to modify my schema. So I need to add parameter name here, which is type string. And then I need to implement that here in resolvers. So here the hello will be the same, but then I want to extract this name parameter and use it in here. So what I need to do here in the function parameters, first parameter is actually linked to the parent of the query. There's no parent here, so we don't need it. But the second parameter is the parameter you can access through an object. And I want to get this name parameter. And now here I can just say hello name. Okay, so I can save that. And let's go to the GraphQL interface here, and let's see. So you see query hello, and now you see that there's argument. It takes argument name. So I can click here plus, and here I can specify the argument. So I'll say Jacob, and then I will run the query, and it returns hello Jacob, right? If I say John, I will say hello John. So now let's do the same, but from the React app. So I'm gonna go back to VS Code, my web UI. I wanna go to the hello component, and here I need to modify my query. And again, the same thing I did previously, I can just copy it over from here, and I can just paste it here. Okay, I'll format this so it looks nice. And then there's one more thing I need to do, which is I need to pass the parameter into the useQuery hook. But that's pretty simple. I just have variables property here, and I need to pass name. I'm gonna pass name Jacob. Okay, let's see if that works. Let's go back to React app, and there you go, hello Jacob. So that's how you pass parameters into the Apollo server backend. Okay, so now let's do a quick refactoring, because as you see here, both my type definitions and resolvers are in the same file, and it's kind of getting a little bit messy. So I'm going to extract them into separate files. So I'm going to create a new folder here called models. I'm going to create the file type devs, and I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to put it here. I'm going to export type devs, and here I need to import GQL, GraphQL tag, and here I don't need this anymore. I'm just going to import type devs from type devs.js. I'm going to do the same with resolvers. I'm gonna just add them into the store directory, resolvers.js. I'm gonna export resolvers, save, and here I just need to import them in a similar way, resolvers from resolvers.js. Okay, so let's see if everything is working still. Okay, the React app is fine. And Apollo server is working as well. I say Jacob. There you go. So we went through like the end-to-end setup to call the hello query from React. Then we added the parameter to the query, and again we call it from the GraphQL playground. And we also call the query from React. And we did a quick refactoring when we extracted the type definitions and resolvers into separate modules. So now we're gonna go to the meat of the video, which is creating a CRUD app using MongoDB. So CRUD stands for create, read, update, delete. This is like a bread and butter of every web app, where you always have some data you wanna insert to some persistence layer. You always want to display some data, and you always want to be able to modify them and delete. So now I'm gonna show you how to create a CRUD app with MongoDB. And here are the instructions how to start the MongoDB locally. I already run this command. You can also check out MongoDB docs on how to install it. And I'm also gonna use MongoDB Compass, which I strongly recommend when you're working with MongoDB, because it enables you to quickly preview what data you have in your database. So I'm gonna open MongoDB Compass, and I'm just gonna create a new database called MARN. I'm gonna add a collection name books, because we wanna create a CRUD apps that allows you to manage books. You can create books, you can edit them, delete, and display in the web UI. So I'm gonna create this database. And yeah, there we go. Have it here. So currently I shouldn't have everything here in the database, and this is fine. So now we're gonna work on connecting to the database from Node.js. So let's go back here to my index.js file. And we need to install mongoose, because we're gonna use mongoose to connect to MongoDB. So actually, let me pull up my terminal. Let's go to Apollo server, and I'll install mongoose. And once this is installed, here I'm gonna just import mongoose from mongoose, and I'm gonna create database connection. I'm gonna say mongoose connect, and I need the connection string, and you can actually grab it from MongoDB Compass. So here my Mongo is running on localhost 27017. This is a default port that you usually can use, and you can customize it, but by default, if you install MongoDB, it will be running on this port. So I'm just gonna grab this. I'm gonna go back here. I'm gonna say MongoDB localhost 2707, and I'm gonna say /MARN, because that's the name of my database. So that is the connection string I need here. And once this connection is established, I'm just gonna print to the console backtick, and I'm gonna put like a books emoji here. Okay, connected to DB, and I can get the database connection string from connections to see if I'm actually connected to the one I want to, underscore connection string. And if I save that, boom. Now you see, now I am server started, and I am also connected to DB MongoDB localhost 27017/MARN. We are connected to MongoDB. So now let's add some data to database. You can use Compass and click Add Data, and you can insert document. And here, Compass is generating for you the ID, but I'm also gonna add 2 more properties when I insert the book. So I need to have title, and I also need year. So we're gonna just use these 2 properties. And for title, I'm gonna use Clean Code, very cool book about software development. It was written in, I think, 2008. Okay, and make it a little bit bigger. So now if I click insert, it will insert the document into the database. Do it a little bit bigger, right? I have the clean code here. So now, how can I query this collection? So I can, again, I'm gonna use mongoose for that. The first step is I need to create a model for the book collection. So I'll start with new file, book.js. I'll import mongoose from mongoose, thank you. And I'll say export const book mongoose.model. I'll call the model book. And I'll provide the schema. And the schema has a title, which will be a string, and year, which would be a number. And this is pretty much it. I don't have to specify the ID because Mongoose is smart enough to just figure it out for me. So I just have my book model with 2 properties, title and year. And now, in order to access that, I need to expose API. It will enable me to call that. So again, like we did previously, I'm going to go to my type devs, and here in the query, I need to actually define 2 things. So first, I need to define query, let's say, called books, that will return, and yeah, what would it return? So I want to return the collection of books, but now I need to define my book type. So now below here, I'm going to define a new type called book, and the book has ID, which is a type of ID. It also has a title, which is string, and it has year, which is integer. So in GraphQL, we don't have a number, but we have integers or floats. So here for the year, we'll use integer. So now when I have that, I just need to now implement this books query. So I'm gonna go back to resolvers. The same how I have my hello function, I'm gonna add books function, and this will be async function, no parameters, and I'm gonna call the MongoDB. And how I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna use this book model. Okay, so in resolvers I need to import book from model/book, and I'm gonna say book.find and pass empty object, and this will return all books, because that means I don't have any filters to filter the books. So I'm gonna click save. I need to add JS here. What doesn't work here? Book from models. JS address module does not provide export name default. Oh, I need to import this like this. And there we go, connected, everything works. So let's go to the GraphQL playground and let's see. I'm gonna go back and you see now I have hello query and also books query. And I can click through here. I can say add books query here. It gives me fields ID, title, and year. And I don't need any variables because I'm not passing anything. And I can hit query. And boom, there you go. I got the data object which has collection of books, which is an array. And there's one book there. Clean code written in 2008. So that's pretty cool. So now I'm getting another component of the MARN stack, which is MongoDB. So I have MongoDB, we have Apollo server, we have React, and we of course have Node, which is kind of working together with the Apollo server. So now let's display these books in React UI. Right? And again, on my blog, you can go and follow through like all of these instructions step by step, how to create queries. And now we are on the how to insert collection, how to use GraphQL UI. And here, now we're gonna display books in React UI. So in order to do that, I'm gonna go back to VS Code. I'm gonna go to my web UI. So for displaying books, I'm gonna create two components. I'm gonna use them here in my app .js component, which is my main component. So I want to just have components that display books. Okay, I don't have it yet. I need to create it, but it will live in components directory, and this component will call the GraphQL API, like the hello component is doing it, but instead of displaying hello, it will just display books. So now I'm gonna go and create new component called books.js, and this is a React file, and export default function books. And here I'm gonna return the list of books. Return will be div and something in between. So again, it will be pretty similar to what I did here. I need my GraphQL use query. I need a query definition. So I'm just gonna copy over this and I'm gonna paste it here. Instead of hello query though, I need the books query. I could modify it by hand, but I can again just go back to the Apollo server playground. I can just grab this query from here. So I'm gonna copy this over here, the books query. Formatting. I have my books query, right? And another thing is, again here, I'm gonna copy over this piece of code, and instead of calling hello query, I'm gonna call books query. I'm not passing any variables, so I can remove that one. And now, like, I'll do it a little bit different. So here, if I have error, I still want to print in the console books query error. But I want to display my books in a table. And I'm gonna use Twitter Bootstrap to format the table so it looks nice. So I'm gonna go to Twitter Bootstrap 4.0, sure. So I just need to grab this link to CSS on the Twitter Bootstrap website. I don't need JavaScript because I won't be doing any fancy stuff, so I'm just gonna grab the CSS, go back to my React app, and in my index.html, and here I'm gonna paste the link to the Bootstrap CSS. Okay, this is done. So now in my books component, I want to create a table, class name table, and I need a header here. The class name for that to make it dark is thead dark. So the header will be dark, the list won't be. And in the row here, and two headers. Oops. First one will be title, and the second one would be year. And here I'll create a body, and the body will have, depending on the state. So if data is still loading, I'm just gonna do trtd loading, and same if there is an error. Oops, error. I'll say check console logs for error, or yeah. And if data is not loading and there's no error, then I want to display books. But I don't want to just display like the JSON I'm gonna get back. So I want to map this. So I'm gonna get book, and I want to nicely display the book here. And I could do it in line here, but instead I'm gonna also create a component called book, where I'm gonna just pass the book I want to display, and also this will need a key. I'll just use book ID as a key. So let me do it like this, so it's visible. There we go. So I have my table with title and year. If data is loading, I'm just displaying loading status. If there's an error, displaying this. And if I get the data, I'm mapping books to the book component, which I still don't have. I need to create it. But before I create it, let me import it. I'm gonna put it in the components as well. So actually it will be here. Just gonna call it book. Now save that. I'm getting error, right, because book is not found. So now I'm gonna just create a component, new file, book.js, and this will be pretty simple. Export default function book. It will take parameter book and will return the row and td here book.title and td book.year. And now let's see how it looks like. Let's go back to React app. We don't need this. And boom, there we go. Hello Jacob and title clean code 2008. Beautiful. So now we are calling MongoDB from the React through GraphQL API powered by the Apollo server. So now we have like two components here, the Hello Jacob and books. So let's add React router now into the app, because before we introduce feature that enables you to create books, because then, you know, I don't want to add form here. Let's create like a separate route for all of that. So let's start with just installing the React router. I'm gonna go to web UI and I'm gonna say npm install React router DOM. And now I'm gonna go back to my React app, and here in the app.js I'm gonna import a few things from the React router module. So I need browser router first, React router DOM, and I need to wrap my entire app in this browser router. So I'm just gonna wrap this like this and that. But this won't do anything. I need a few more things. I need a link that will enable me to create links to my routes. I need my route and routes components. And now in browser router, I'm gonna here create a navigation, and again I'm gonna use Twitter Bootstrap for that. I'm gonna say nav class name navbar, and I'm gonna make it dark with dark background. And here in the navigation, I'll create a div. Actually, I need a class navbar nav and margin right auto and flex row, so the menu items are next to each other, not below each other. And now I'm going to use the link component and specify the path to. Also going to use the class name nav link and margin right 2, so there is some spacing between links. And it's going to be called home. I'm going to do the same thing for books. I'll just call it books. So he'll be slash books. And now, outside of navigation, I'll create a container with margin top 5. And here in that container, I'll have my routes. So here, depending on what route I have, I will display different things. So first I'm gonna define my route with path slash, and this is gonna show component hello. And the same for books. And there you go. Okay, so now when I go back to the app, I have my two components under two separate routes, under home and under books. I can switch between these two. And again, all of that is on the blog. Here we go to the add React router. It shows step by step, like how to just install the React router DOM module and how to modify the app.js to make it work. So now let's add the create mutation that will enable us to create the books. So mutation is a GraphQL term for API that modifies data. So query is just returning data, but mutation is calling the backend, can modify data in the backend, and can also return. So let's go back to Apollo server. Go back to models and the type definitions. And here I need to add new type, mutation. And here I'm gonna define my create book mutation. So it's pretty similar to query. It has a name and it takes parameters. In here I need two parameters, title and year, and I'm gonna return book. So I'm gonna take the string, a year, and I'm gonna create a new object in the database and return that. So I have my type definition, and now I need to implement it. An implementation, of course, happens in resolvers. So here, again, I need to add a separate block called mutation, and create function. And this will be an async function. We skip the first parameter because we don't need the link to parent, which actually doesn't exist here. And we need to get the title parameter and year. And here we need to call mongoose to actually create this in database. So I'm going to say const new book, which is imported here. I'm going to pass title and year. And now I'm going to say await new book dot save. So this will actually save the book into database, and then I can return new book. Okay, so now I can go to the GraphQL playground and go back. This is a query. And here there's a mutation. Okay, and again I can click through here, create, pass title, pass year, and return ID, title, and year. Okay, make it like this so I can see it better. Okay, and through here I can actually create a book. So here I'll say hello startup. This is a cool book written in 2015 about creating companies, about like all different aspects of creating a company. Very, very cool read, strongly recommend. So let's see, if I hit mutation here, boom, look at that, I got ID, so this is new book ID in MongoDB. I'll start up here. Let's see in Compass if it's actually in the database. So refresh here, clicking find, and boom, there you go, hello startup. And also look at this __v0. So this is added by Mongoose. This is a schema versioning that Mongoose implements by default. So you can see that this I inserted manually. This is inserted by Mongoose. All right, so everything is working here. So now let me close this. We have to create mutation. Again, everything step by step is on the blog. So now let's add UI for creating new book in the React app. So I'm gonna go back to web UI here, and I'm gonna add a new component called create book.js, and this is a React file, and here it's very similar to my books component, because I'm gonna also need to call Apollo client. I also need to define the I need to define the mutation of the query, but it's pretty similar. So I'm gonna need to import GQL and define the mutation. So let's go here, let's say import GQL from Apollo client, and then create book mutation GQL, and what would be my mutation the schema here. Of course, I go back to the playground and I just grab this. Okay. paste it here. I'm gonna format this. Okay, so I have my mutation, and I of course need to create a component. So I say export default function create book, and here I need to create a form and then call this mutation with data from the form. So let's start with just creating the form. So I'll see return form. We will not have action for now. We'll just have div form group. This is Twitter Bootstrap. We'll have label HTML4 title. I don't need a class name here. I'll call it title. And input form control. Input type text, class name form control. And I want to do this twice. And this will be year, and also need to add a title here, title, and similarly here, but here the title will be year. And I want input, which is a button primary, and this will be submit button, and the text will be create on it. So I have this form, and let's add this component as a separate route here. So I'm gonna copy the books, and I'm gonna say create here, create, and I'm gonna add new route, create, and create book. To import it, I hit enter and did it automatically for me. So now let's go back to the React app and let's see if we have it. Well, there we go. Home books create. Yay, we have the form, but the form doesn't do anything yet. So now I need to call that mutation that I defined in the component. So let's do that. Let's go back to create book. Okay, so I have my form. I have this create mutation definition, and I need to somehow pass data from these input fields to the function that will be invoked when I click the submit button. So let's do that. So here I'll add the onSubmit function. I'm gonna pass the event, and I'm gonna call it handle submit. I'm gonna pass the event, and what I want to do in the handle submit function, I want to prevent default, so I don't want to reload the site, and here I wanna call create mutation, and I also need to bind the input fields into some variables. I'm gonna use React hooks use state. I'm gonna say USF title, set title, and this will be just empty at first. By the way, this USF comes from this very cool extension called Simple React Snippets. I recommend you to try it out. It has like a bunch of different snippets, like import React component, import React DOM, IMRS, import React use state, so on and so forth. And somewhere here is the USF that declare new state variable using state hook. So very, very useful. I'm gonna use USF and say the same for year. Set year also nothing for now. And in the input fields, let me format it so it's more readable. We have class name, title, blah blah blah. So here I need to say value is equal title. I need to do the same for the year. Value equals year. And I also want to update this variable when the value in the input changes. So I'll say on change equals here event set title event target value. So this will get the value from the input field and set it into the title state. And I want to do the same for a year, but here I'm going to say set year. Okay, so let's just add here console info saying creating book title and year. Let's see if this works properly. Oops, we have some error here. No, use state is not defined. Oh yeah, because I need to import use state from React, and now it works. So let's go back here. So we are here, and let me open the console. Let's put title. Let's call it. Let's see, clean coder. Another great book by Uncle Bob. And when I hit create, oh, there you go, creating book, clean coder 2011. So it's actually updating the variable. So this is great. So now what I need to do is I just need to call the create mutation. And to do that, instead of using the use query, I'm gonna use mutation hook. Mutation. And over here, I'm gonna create the create mutation. Whoops. Create mutation. Use mutation. I'm gonna pass the create book mutation. Okay. And this create mutation will be called here. And I need to pass the variables. So I need to pass title and I need to pass year, but I cannot pass it straight because I need to convert it into a number. So I'm gonna just say plus year. So this will convert a string from the input field into a number. And also, like once this will be done, I'll just create an alert saying that book title year created, so I know that it actually worked. So I have a UI feedback, and I'm also gonna clear out the both title field and the year field, because once I add a new book, I don't need this data in the form. So now we have pretty much everything needed to make it work, and now we should be able to pass this title and year to the backend and create the book in the database. So let's see if that works. Go back here, let's just refresh, just making sure, and let's say clean coder 2015 create book clean coder created. Okay, and let's go back to books, and oh hey, clean coder is here. Let's create another book. Let's say pragmatic programmer. 1999. So this is it's 2M programmer. This is a classic book for every programmer. It should be also read not once, but probably every 5 to 10 years. You should reread that book to remind yourself what's important when you're a programmer. So let's create that one, and hey, pragmatic programmer created as well. Let's go back to books, and oh, what happened here? The pragmatic programmer is not here. So let's go and see if it's in Mongo. So I'm gonna click find, clean code, hello startup, clean coder, and hey, pragmatic programmer is here. So why it's not showing up here? Well, the reason is that the use query hook is displaying data from the local cache. So you remember how when we are creating Polo client, we're creating a cache, in memory cache, okay? And in order to not do back and forth requests every time when you navigate between components here, instead of doing the calls, it's using data from the cache. And there are two solutions how to fix it. So first one is that after you create your book, you can manually modify the cache. Second one is that you can just refresh the cache by doing query to the backend. So first solution with manually updating cache is recommended when you really care about the performance. Like you don't want to do additional call, you're fine keeping the state here, and maybe you want to refresh it later. However, in this case, we can just use the refetch query approach because we don't care that much about performance. It's fine to do this additional request. It's still milliseconds, is not a very big deal. So how to do the data refetch after the query? So actually this is pretty simple. I need to go back to my create book component, and here in my use mutation hook, I need to pass a second parameter, refetch queries, and here I need to specify a list of queries I want to refetch after this mutation is being called. And here I need to pass my get books query, or I call it books query, I believe. But now I need to define this query here, and I already have it in my books component, right? So I could, copy paste it here, and this would work. But it'll be better if I could extract this to separate component. But before I do it, let's see if it works. So I added this refetch queries, added the books query, which is the same here in books and create book. So let's go back here. Home books, clean coder. Let's add one more book, rework. Very cool book by DHH. Also recommend to check it out. So I hit create. Book rework created. I go back to books, and I have rework, and I also have the pragmatic programmer that I added. So now everything here happens as it should. So now let's extract these two into separate files. So I'm gonna grab create book and books query. I'm gonna create a new file, GraphQL GraphQL.js, and I'm gonna say export const export const, and I also need to import GraphQL from GraphQL tag. this. Just import books query and create book mutation from GraphQL, and I'll do the same in the books component. I'll remove this and I'll import here. I just need books query. I don't need EQL. Boom. Let's see if everything is working here. All right. Let's add another book. Remote 2015. Cool book about remote work. Again, written by DHH. Interesting read about different caveats and considerations you should take into when you're creating remote first company. So I'm gonna hit create, book created, and books. So there we go. It is working. So now to look underneath, let's go back and let's go to the create book component, and let me just comment this out. So I will not have any queries to refetch. Okay. Now I'm gonna go back to browser. I'm gonna open the network tab, and I want to filter the fetch XHR. Okay, so I'm gonna refresh, and oh, there's one request, and I'm getting books, right? I'm getting all my 6 books I have here. And now I'm gonna go to create, and I'm gonna add another book. Let's see, 0 to 1. Very cool book written by Peter Thiel about building companies and thinking big. So I'm gonna hit create. Okay, and there was another request here, but this is just the create mutation, right? And then when I go back to books, you see there's no additional request here, and I don't see 0 to 1. So now when I do the refetch change, I go back here. Let's just refresh everything. I have my books, a hello request actually here. Here there's a books request now. Now I go to create. I say lean startup 2011. Very good book about creating companies in a lean manner, like how to do it faster, cheaper. Very recommended. Then we hit create. Okay, book created, and you see now I got another request to get books, and this request has like a 7th book, which is the lean startup. And when I go to books, the cache is refreshed. Okay, so we have 2 components of the CRUD app. We have the read and we have create. So now we have 2 more, which is deleting books and editing books. So let's start with deleting, because that's actually very similar to creating, because we also need to create a mutation. We just modifying the backend in a different way. And again, everything is in my blog post at jj09.net, so you can go back there and all the code listings are there. So let's go back to VS Code, and let's go to type devs, and let's add the delete mutation. So delete mutation will take ID, because that's everything we need to delete the book, because they are uniquely identifiable by ID only. And we need to implement what happens when delete is being called. So this will be also async function. We need to extract the ID, and here say const result equals await book.delete 1, and I need to find the book. Notice underscore ID, because this is what MongoDB is using for IDs. It's underscore ID. Say underscore ID is the past ID, and if result is acknowledged and result deleted count is equals to 1, then I'm just gonna return ID, and otherwise I'm gonna return null. So this should do. And let's go to GraphQL Playground. Let's go back and see, now I have create and delete mutations. So I'm going to delete mutation, and I need to pass ID. So I don't need title and year anymore. I have the delete ID. Let me change this actually into just ID. And let me grab some ID from the compass. So let's see the pragmatic programmer. Let's delete this one. I'm gonna go back here. I'm gonna pass this ID. I'm gonna click, and boom, I go back the ID. And you know, like now this doesn't exist anymore. So if I try to delete book that doesn't exist, I just get null. So I can then reuse that in the UI. So now let's also do this in the UI. So I'm gonna go to Web UI, and here I'm gonna go to book component. Let me just change it to React, and here I'm gonna add another cell in which I'm gonna add button danger, so it's red, delete, and this button will need click. I'll click delete book function, which I'm gonna define here. Delete book. And this delete book, we need to call the mutation. So this will be very similar again here. I need my use mutation. So I'll go here, I'll use mutation. And now I need to call this mutation, but I also need to define it. And I'm gonna define it in the GraphQL.js. Okay, so I'm gonna go here, say export const delete book mutation GQL, and what's going on here? Of course, I'm gonna go back to my GraphQL Playground and just gonna copy it over. Boom, boom. I have my delete big mutation, and now go back to book component. I'm gonna import it. Mutation from GraphQL, and again, similarly to create book, I'm gonna create a mutation. Here, instead of create mutation, it will be delete mutation, delete book mutation, and I want to still refetch the books query after this happens, right? So I also need to import that query, and now when deleting book, I just need to call that mutation, and I need to pass ID variable. ID would be book.id. And this is pretty much everything we need, because we just need this ID and we need to pass it and call the mutation. So let's see if that works. So I'm gonna go back to Chrome, I'm gonna go back to React app, and you see now I have this delete buttons here. Oh, this is kind of ugly. So let's fix this. So here in books, we just need to add th, and boom, now it's nice. Okay, so let's remove remote. Boom, it's gone, and make sure it's also removed from here. So find, all right, it's 6 books, but there is no remote. Cool, so deletion is working. So now the very last component we need is editing books. So editing books is almost like creating. You just need to pass ID in addition to title and year. So let's start with creating the mutation in the backend. So let's go back to Apollo server, and let's start with model. So here I'll say edit, and I need to pass ID to identify the book. I need to pass title to know what title to update to, and year to know what year to update to. And I'm gonna return book if the update went through. Okay, so we have type definition, and again, now just need to implement that in resolvers. So edit, async function, extracting ID, title, and year. So it's kind of like a mix of the create and delete, right? It's a bit both, because I don't only need to find a book, but also know what to put in. And here it'll be like a two-step process. So first, I need to find a book, and second, I need to set the title and year. And actually, I can do it with one mongoose command. Await book dot update one. And here, first I need to pass a filter, and then I can pass like the update parameters. So in the filter, I'm just gonna pass the ID. So underscore ID is mapped to ID. And here in the update query, I'm gonna say $set, and here I'm gonna specify the properties I wanna update, which is title and year. And if result is acknowledged and result is updated count is equals to 1, then I'm gonna return, and I'm gonna find one book, and again passing the filter by ID. Otherwise, I'm just gonna return null. Okay, so this is my edit function. Right, kind of like two steps. Like in first, I'm updating the book that is identified by the ID that I passed. Second is I'm just fetching it for the sake of consistency, and I'm returning it. So let's see if that works. Let's grab, let's say lean startup, still here. So let's grab this ID, and let's go to the GraphQL playground. You see I have add mutation. I want everything here and all the fields. So now I have the edit ID. Let's change this just to ID. And here as an ID, I'm gonna pass this. So title is lean startup, and let's say 2022. Let's say there's like an updated edition, so I'm gonna say lean startup updated edition. So now let's see if that works. I'm gonna hit mutation and edit. No, whoa, what happened? So let's see. I passed the correct ID, I believe. Edit update one ID. Let's see, did it work here? Oh, it worked here. Okay, so what went wrong? Oh, upserted. It was updated count, or actually, sorry, modified count. Yeah, there we go. So because upserted count was not 1, so it just returned the null. So let's see one more time. Lean startup, updated edition, let's say 2023, why not? Mutation, and boom, now I get the parameters here. The ID is the same, title is updated, year is updated as well. Cool, so now let's add this to the UI. So what we're gonna do in UI, to make it nice, I'm gonna just do it in the book component. So what I'm gonna do in the book component is I'm gonna add editing mode. So if you remember, like we display all the books here, so I'll add the edit button here, and if you click it, these two will change into input fields, and it will enable you to modify it, and then click save. So let's first do that. So to do this editing mode, I need new state. Let's say USF is editing, and I'll set it to false because initially this will be false. And if we are in the is editing state, I'm gonna just display input field, type text. I'm gonna bind the value of it to title, but let me just add a class form control so it looks nice. And I'm gonna do the same for for the year here, okay. And I'm gonna do the same in here. So if we are in editing mode, I want a button, that says save. And if I'm not in editing mode, I want a button that says edit. And I wanna still have the button that says delete. But now I need to just wrap this into, let's just wrap it in empty tag. Okay, cool. And also I need to add the class name. Say this button won't be dangerous, just info. And I'm gonna add right margin 2. And similarly for this one, but maybe call it success, so it's green. But also, in addition to save, on another button that will say cancel, so I can discard all the changes. It can be also red, and I also need to wrap this in empty tags. All right, cool. So now when I click edit, I want to activate this this edit mode. So I can just say on click set is editing true, and in cancel I can just say on click set is editing to false. Okay, so I have one error. Oh, I need to import the use state, fine, use state, and now everything works. So let's see how it looks. Oh, beautiful, edit, boom, and cancel. Okay, let me close this. Okay, that looks great. So my editing mode works, but hey, like this is empty, so that's not ideal. I want to put the existing name and year here, just as it was. And of course I need to hook up the save functionality. So let's do that. So here I need to add 2 more states. So I need state title, and I'm gonna set it to book title, and I need state year, and I'm gonna set it to book year. And I'm gonna bind these values in this input fields here. Say value equals title, and here value equals year. To make it more readable, let me just format this a little bit. Okay, that's nice. But also, again, when I modify the input, I want to update the state, right? So change, let's say event set title and target dot value, and same thing here for the year, set year to value. So now these two should be connected. And I also want to connect save to save changes function, which I need to create. Const save changes. And here, just let's see if the updating updating book, and let's pass the title in here just to make sure that the connection here works as it's supposed to. And also here I'm gonna set this editing to false, and after I set it to false, it should go back to the previous state. So let's save and let's see if that works. Just open console. On the console, okay, there's some issues here. Oh, use state is not defined. I think that's old one. Okay, so let's say reworking, right? If I click save, oh, reworking, cool. So it's done properly, but of course, you know, I go back, I get the old values because we didn't update. So now let's use this title and year, and let's call the edit mutation. So again, I need to create a mutation here. Support const edit book mutation GraphQL, and I'm gonna grab mutation from the playground. So here, copy paste, add some formatting so it looks nice, and now in the book I'm gonna import edit book mutation, and kind of the same way how I define delete mutation, I'm gonna define edit mutation. Here I'm gonna say edit book mutation. Again, I'm gonna refetch the books query as well, similar approach. And here I'm gonna call it, and I wanna pass the variables. And here I'm gonna pass ID, which is book.id. I'm gonna pass title, which is title, and I'm gonna pass year, which has to be converted from string to a number. Okay, so I think that pretty much works, and let's see, let's save it. Let's go back to UI. And let's see, let's go to rework. And let's say I just want to, let's close this. Let's say I just want to change the year to 2011. Save. Boom, nice. 2011. Go back to 2010. And it's working. And also, like, if I do changes and I cancel, go back. Great. The one thing I need to fix is that, you know, I changed it from 2010 to 2011, right? But it didn't discard my changes really. So what I need to do here is that when I'm calling the cancel here, I'm actually gonna grab this and say discard changes. I'm gonna like create like a separate function here. Discard changes. And in addition to set editing to false, it's also gonna set title to book.title and set year to book.year. So now I'm gonna go here and let's refresh. Okay, rework. 2011, cancel. 2010, and it's back to 2010. So everything is working. So this is pretty much it. We went through creating the Apollo server, React app UI, and then create like an end-to-end CRUD app, which enables you to create books, view them, delete them, and also modify them. All this code that I wrote here is available in the GitHub repo. Link is here in the blog post. It's github.com/jj09/marn. And to learn more about Apollo, check out the Apollo docs. I'm curious what stacks are you using to build web apps these days. Again, pretty popular these days is MARN stack when you use Express. MARN stack use Apollo. So let me know in comments what do you think, and maybe you're interested in taking this to the next level. And now once you have the end-to-end MARN app, like maybe you want to deploy it to AWS, or maybe you want to use Relay, or maybe you want to use some other libraries like Redux to organize the code. So if you're interested in more content like that, again, let me know in comments, and hope you find this video useful, and good luck in creating web apps.